Full details on example policies at selectquote.com.
Hey, it's Tom. Fossil fuels continue to have negative impacts on our environment. Luckily, there are more ways now than ever to use renewable energy in your home or business. All Energy Solar offers smart energy solutions like custom solar paneling, electric vehicle chargers, and energy storage. Solar panel systems can last for decades, meaning you can help the environment and cut back on electric bills for years to come. There are incentives and rebates available to most people who install solar energy, too. Last year, the federal solar tax credit increased to a 30% tax credit. This incentive can be used in combination with other incentives from your utility, county, or city. But don't delay or miss out, as many of these incentives are limited to only a certain number of people. So have a professional from All Energy Solar help you discover how solar can power up your property while saving on your energy costs. Call 800-620-3370 or visit allenergysolar.com.
Hey, it's Patrick. While you and your family are ready for summer, make sure your home is ready for summer too. There are going to be a lot of people over at your house for those barbecues and graduation parties in June, so make sure to check in with my friends at Zero Res to make sure your floors are in tip-top shape. And now that summer is finally here, it's time to take advantage of Zero Res's best deal of the year. Carpets, tile, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified, so it's time to call my cleaning heroes at Zero Res. It's also the perfect time of year to get your air ducts and your dryer vent cleaned too. You've waited and now you save. Book now and take advantage of the summer sale and get 20% off all services. Schedule your appointment by calling 9520-RES or going to zeroresminnesota.com and asking for the AM 950 special. Backward or forward spells the same. Zero Res.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. A chance of rain and storms late tonight with a low of 66. More scattered rain and storms possible on Tuesday with a high of 85.
Warner Stellian has grill savings you can't find at big box warehouses. Score the lowest prices of the year on gas grills, pellet smokers, and griddles. Plus, get 3 boxes of no-name meats and seafood. Then our pros assemble and deliver for free. Only from Warner Stellian.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake. Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. We discuss local and national Native news and events, and as you know, Haley, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
You're exactly right, Dega. This portion of the show is supported by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, we are on at 5 p.m. now, and we're grooving on this. Just a little different, but we're really happy to be on and happy people are listening, and we really have a jam-packed show tonight. We have the Lieutenant Governor who sends us a nice little piece weekly or bi-weekly, I should say. And then we have Dr. Stately. One of the things I want to talk about real quick before we get to the Lieutenant Governor, she was a keynote speaker today at the National Congress of American Indians, which was held at Mystic Lake, the casino out there, and that's all week, the National Congress of American Indians. I also got to see a couple other speakers like Secretary Deb Haaland was there. We also had a guest of ours too. The lawyer for Leonard Peltier spoke very eloquently about us supporting uh, Leonard's release and how much power we have as nations across Turtle Island. And it was good that he came and spoke to all these leaders across Turtle Island. So this is going on, Haley, all week at Mystic Lake, and I'll be heading back there after the show to drop in and check out the market. They have a big market there, and it's pretty exciting.
How late is that open till today?
The market's open till 9, so
Oh.
they have a big market there, and a lot of vendors there. So I'll be swinging by there again and supporting and asking a lot of questions from these. It's not only sales, but there's people that, whether it's like the Indian governance is there and has a booth. There's
Nice.
quite a few groups across Turtle Island. Plus, there's swag and beading and things like that being sold. And I saw a lot of silver too, and turquoise, which is our relatives of the South that do that. So it'll be very cool and very cool to head back. But what I want to do, Haley, right now is I want to touch base here and play the segment that the Lieutenant Governor sends us every 2 weeks. Go ahead and play it.
Bonjour, this is Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. What an incredible end to one of the most productive legislative sessions of our lifetime. The work we did together this session will make a generational impact on our state, lowering costs, improving lives, and cutting child poverty. None of these victories would be possible without the deep partnership across community, across the legislature, and across our state. So thank you to everyone from community who showed up to help get this done. There's so much good stuff in this budget, including things that I've worked on my entire career, and I'm so proud to share a few highlights of the One Minnesota budget. I'm thrilled that projects like that are deeply embedded in community are included in this package, like Anda Young, which we visited this spring and saw firsthand the need for investment and renovation, Division of Indian Work, the Indigenous Peoples Task Force, New Native Theater, Little Earth Residents Association, Little Earth Neighborhood Early Learning Center, Indian Health Board, Lower Phelan Creek, the Wakantipi Center, Native American Community Clinic, Red Lake Tribal College, the Minnesota Fund, and the Leech Lake Wellness Center in Cass Lake. And all of these have been led by and for the urban Native community, as well as tribal nations and members. It is an incredible accomplishment, and I am so grateful to everyone who worked so hard to get this done. The Higher Education Omnibus helps to create more pathways for Minnesota students to attend college or workforce training. This includes the American Indian Scholar Program, which covers tuition and fees for American Indian students residing in Minnesota and enrolled members of Minnesota tribal nations seeking an undergraduate degree at one of Minnesota's 2- and 4-year public colleges and universities. I can hardly believe it. This package also increases funding for the Tribal College Supplemental Grant Program and establishes the North Star Promise Program, which provides free undergraduate tuition at public 2- and 4-year colleges and universities for Minnesota residents and families with a household income of $80,000 or less. The Public Safety Omnibus invests in a spectrum of public safety solutions to help keep everyone safe in their community. These historic gun safety and violent crime prevention measures include implementing universal background checks to close the loophole for private transfers of semi-automatic weapons and handguns, and extreme risk protection orders. It expands the Office of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives with new full-time staff positions and funding for the Advisory Council, establishing a reward fund for information on missing and murdered Indigenous relatives as well. It provides funding for tribal nations to hire their own tribal assistant probation officer staff to work in tandem with the Department of Corrections and county supervision agencies through an MOU, and invest in community-based crime prevention, juvenile justice, and the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And one of the most meaningful items in this budget package is ensuring that people who are incarcerated have access to free phone calls with family and friends. The housing omnibus is also historic. It's a historic $1 billion investment, billion with a B, the largest single investment in housing in state history that addresses the entire spectrum of housing stability, from our relatives experiencing homelessness to renters to first-time home buyers. We also passed $240 million to replace lead pipes across the state because everyone deserves safe, clean drinking water. But right now, over 100,000 pipes are leaching lead into our drinking water, presenting the greatest risk to children and to pregnant people and disproportionately harming marginalized communities across the state. So we're going to get this done, and we're going to make sure that people have clean, safe drinking water. And while the 2023 legislative session may be over, Governor Walz and I are committed to continuing to work in partnership with the legislator, leaders in community, and people all across the state to make sure that Minnesota is the best state for all children and families to thrive. Miigwech, Pinagigi, and back to you.
Wow, Pinagigi, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And wow, what a great report that we have every couple of weeks from the Lieutenant Governor, Haley. And wow, we're just blessed to have that report and just a reminder of all the great things that our trifecta here in Minnesota has done for our Native community, which has never really happened before, really, and how the Native community, Haley, work together as a tandem about, bringing these bills up. And it was really powerful to see the cooperation between all these great community organizations.
Right. And so Peggy was talking a lot about like the urban Native community, and heard her shout out New Native Theater.
Yeah.
And then also, NACC, Native American Community Clinic here in Minneapolis, one of our amazing sponsors as well, just doing really great work. And I think that's huge for the state of Minnesota. Free undergrad tuition for 2 to 4 year public college. That's
for Native kids.
for natives. Yeah. That's huge.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
It's a game changer too. And that's why
It is.
before me, Haley, I'm really working on with my other job to get Ho-Chunk recognized in Minnesota. And I think it's long overdue, and we're one of the original treaty signers in 1855. So we're excited about the possibilities of that. But, one thing she said today that I just want to end this segment with, and we'll have Dr. Stately up next. She said, when Native communities are healthy and prosperous, the whole communities are. And I really, truly have never heard that said, but I do believe that. And she gave a great example about the COVID vaccines that were directed to the Native Americans. And when they had enough, they gave it to the communities. So that's how we roll. And we're here, and it's the medicine wheel all over again. Hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Up next, Dr. Stately. Oh, wow.
Stay with us.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
A lot has changed since 2020. Metro Transit wants to hear from you to help build a network that best serves the Metro's needs for the next 5 years. Help us grow the right way as more resources, like more drivers, become available. Learn more, fill out an online survey, and find out about upcoming meetings in your neighborhood at metrotransit.org/network-now. metrotransit.org/network-now.
When we heal from our traumas,
when we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. You know, over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Minnesota 350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice.
Yes, they do. Hey, we're here with Dr. Stately. He is the president and CEO, executive director of Native American Community Clinic here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And we always love talking to Dr. Stately Monday. Dr. Stately, I just got to say a quick thing here is like we're on an hour earlier and it's kind of cut into my nappy time and I'm a little out of it right now. Oh,
Yeah, me too, actually. I was just thinking about that because I was here waiting for like the time to jump on and I was kind of like, you know.
I'm cutting into your NPR time too. Oh,
Oh, so, somebody came to knock on my door and they're like, are you talking to somebody? Are you sleeping? What are you doing?
Yeah. Cool. Hey, we just had Lieutenant Governor's piece on that she sends us every 2 weeks, and she
Nice.
mentioned the Native American Community Clinic and the funding that's heading your way. And I saw her today Dr. Stately, at the National Congress of American Indians at Shakopee today, which is going on all week. And what a story. And I was just ending the last segment talking a little bit about this, and I want to just get your feedback before we catch up on what you've been doing. And she said that, you know, when Native American communities are healthy, the whole community is healthy. And she told the story about when vaccines first came out, and we had enough for not only our own Native community, but we also started vaccinating everybody in the community. And that was a great example.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is a great example. I do just think also that it gets and I think if she had done her job explaining it, is like what we found was that you know, in lots of situations, not even just here in Minnesota, this is actually true fundamentally across so many tribal communities, both within rural areas, reservation communities, and then also urban areas across the United States, that during the pandemic, tribal people, you know, did what they do, which is we practice our values of being a good relative and sharing our resources and, you know, and stepping into those spaces and helping when we can, right? And lots of places we did a much better job of rolling out and getting vaccines into the arms of people who are eligible to have them early on and when the vaccine rollout. And we did, in many ways, we did a better job of doing that than even the states or the local jurisdictions did themselves, the local public health jurisdictions and big health systems. That has a lot to do with, like, you know, the ability for us to sort of be nimble and to work quickly and effectively on finding solutions, not being bogged down in red tape. Actually, I should call that white tape, and and the like, that helps sort of kind of like moves things faster along in a more streamlined fashion. I also happen to think that it fundamentally does speak to this greater idea of equity in general, around health and other things. Like, one of the things that I think is a good principle to operate from, which is the idea of, like, you know, if you are creating structures within whatever structure you're dealing with, whether that be healthcare, education, you know, job development, any of these things, any of these places where Indigenous people or Black folk are having the worst outcomes in a jurisdiction or in a state or in the nation. When you do a good job of it, of doing what you need to do to invest in addressing the inequities that are embedded within a structure, right? You are dealing with structural racism and those and the antecedents from that, and you are fundamentally you take care of the people who are at the bottom rung of society. Everybody from them on up benefits, and the health and the well-being of the entire nation improves dramatically. Why is that important? Because like I just read this piece the other day, like the United States for the first time in like 50 years has had the worst decline in life expectancy over the last couple of years. And actually this research piece that I was reading said that we have been on that trajectory longer than they originally thought, and it's worse than they originally thought. Everybody thinks it happened during COVID, and that was certainly a factor, but actually this has been happening since the 1930s or 40s or 50s, that slowly the life expectancy rate of the United States has gotten much worse than lots of other places around the world. That probably has a lot to do with like the industrialization of things and the commodification of goods and services and other things like health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Stately, too, just to back up what you were saying before, I know a lot of nations, tribes over the Turtle Island and communities talk about the medicine wheel, and we just touched a little briefly on how we are joining with all the colors. You know, some tribes talk about the colors being white and African American and Asian and in the medicine wheel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good. I was just having this big, deep conversation with somebody the other day about this. Somebody was, I forget who they were off the top of my head. I'm a little sleepy, so I don't have the ability to remember their name. But we're talking about like the medicine wheel and whether or not, like, there's a lot of tribes that will say, like, the medicine wheel isn't a thing for them. It's not like, you know, that doesn't represent the way they think. It's not something that was part of their tribe. And while that's true, I think the medicine wheel has become sort of kind of like this pan Native American symbol of sort of like a philosophical way of organizing our understanding of the world. It is fundamentally becoming a universal symbol for many tribes and tribal people, because it does distill in some fundamental ways the way we think about health and well-being and balance and living in balance. You know, the important things that are that there's a representation there that is clearly different than sort of Western ways of thinking of health and well-being, right? And living life in a good way. You know, I think what's not lost on me is that, you know, it is a circle, and within sort of the natural world, but also within the philosophical way that we think of health and well-being, and living in balance is recognizing that inside of a circle, there's no hierarchy. A circle doesn't have hierarchy by nature, right? There's everything, all parts of the circle are important. All things within the circle have equal value, and there is it also happens to be one of the strongest structures in the world, right? So that prevents that is indestructible. Look at atoms. Atoms are, you know, circles upon circles, right? And so I think that probably there's some there's some relevance there to the concept of that can be aligned with a lot of our indigenous our philosophical values across tribal nations.
Yeah. Well, you know, and to talk a little bit just to our white allies that are listening to us all over Turtle Island, is we talk about pan natives. We all don't, like, you know, everyone talks about smudging and sage. Well, like, for instance, Ho Chunk, we do that with flat cedar. So we all have our different ways that are kind of the similar, but they're different.
Yeah, yeah. And there were actually the things that we would use to sort of like pray with, smudge with, cleanse ourselves, those kinds of things. Those things have a direct relationship to who we are as people and our place on the earth, right? And the relationship to both the earth and to the cosmos. There's alignment in those. That's why one of the things I don't think we talk a whole lot about, which is like why one of the earliest sort of disruptions to our lives as Indigenous people was actually that physical and emotional and spiritual and psychological disruption that happened in our lives when they severed us from our relationship to the land, our homeland, that specific place on the earth that we made our homes, that we created this relationship with that land and all of the things that grew on the land and the sustenance it gave us, and also the position of where we lived in relationship to the stars and how we understood who we are in relationship to things that were bigger than us, right? I think that people don't talk a whole lot about like how that actually contributed greatly to really impacting our health and well-being. Like if all of your stories are handed down to you by your ancestors and your elders, and the songs and the prayers and these practices are place-based, and you are picked up and you are moved to another location that isn't the place where you're from, it can be confusing to understand, like, who am I in this world and how am I aligned to these entities and these things.
Yeah, perfect. We're here with Dr. Stately, CEO of Native American Community Clinic here in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and it's Monday, and it's 5. We're here at 5:00, and we're all a little thrown off, but we're doing well. And we are. I just want to say this before we go off. We are made of earth and sky, and that has to go with a little bit what Dr. Stately was talking about. We'll be right back after this short break.
Stay with us.
Hey, this is Robert Pilot. I taught in St. Paul Public Schools for over 25 years, and I want you to join the team and make a difference in our children's future. Right now, St. Paul Public Schools is offering hiring and retention bonuses up to $10,000 for a variety of teaching and classroom support positions for the next school year. Grow in a supportive and fulfilling public school setting. Limited bonuses are available, so don't delay. Apply at spps.org/careers. Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States.
And 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected.
Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
A lot has changed since 2020. Metro Transit wants to hear from you to help build a network that best serves the Metro's needs for the next 5 years. Help us grow the right way as more resources, like more drivers, become available. Learn more, fill out an online survey, and find out about upcoming meetings in your neighborhood at metrotransit.org/network-now. metrotransit.org/network-now.
When it comes to houses, disassembly is our game, deconstruction is our fame. There are some bucks for your project. Better Futures Minnesota is your contact.
Instead of demolishing your home, let us take it apart by hand, and we can find the building materials a new home. Limited funds are allotted in 2023 for Hennepin County residents and public entities to make deconstruction even more affordable. Check out betterfuturesminnesota.com. That's betterfuturesminnesota.com.
New at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces.
Kuma wood stoves and fireplace inserts. American-made, sturdy and efficient wood heaters. All models qualify for 30% tax credit you can earn for installing efficient and renewable wood heat. Come see the new wood-burning Kuma stoves and fireplace inserts.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has been selling wood-burning products since 1977. Kuma wood burners are hard-working home heaters made from heavy laser-cut steel. Kuma stoves and fireplace inserts have cast iron doors and large self-cleaning glass windows. You can see the firelight and feel the heat from their efficient fire. One of Woodland's many choices to make fire work for you and your home.
Work with the chimney and installation experts. They not only install, but will guide you if you want to install yourself. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood, gas, and electric units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. A chance of rain and storms late tonight with a low of 66. More scattered rain and storms possible on Tuesday with a high of 85. Fill the hot summer nights with the hottest music in the Twin Cities at Crooner Supper Club in Fridley. Crooners is located just north of I-694 off Highway 65. View their schedules and food menus at croonersloungemn.com.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. This is Robert Kyler.
This portion of the show is supported by the Native American Community Clinic on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis, honoring health and tradition.
Wow, yes, they do. And we are here with the CEO of Native American Community Clinic, Dr. Stately. And Dr. Stately, we just we're celebrating an anniversary of the clinic, and I know we've talked about this before, but I just want to say congratulations, and that's a huge deal and a great landmark here in Minnesota. And you know, as we are moving forward politically, Minnesota is a leader in a lot of things in a lot of ways, and I just want to say congratulations to you and your great group of workers there, and really it's just awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, 20 years. We've been here on the avenue, on the cultural corridor. And you mentioned earlier in the earlier segment that the Lieutenant Governor mentioned the investment that the state is making in the clinic. And yeah, we were the beneficiaries of a capital improvement investment grant, a cash allocation to help us build our new building, which we are going to be hopefully breaking ground on in 1 year. And it's going to be a brand new clinic that's 2 stories, going to increase our footprint by about, I would say, about 50%. So we're going from about 21,000 square feet to about 31 or 32,000 square feet. And then we are building 4 floors of housing, affordable housing and supportive housing above the clinic to sort of do our part to solve the intractable, unhouseless, and homeless issue that we have in our community, which I'm not sure if people know this in your your readership, your listenership audience, but in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, Native people represent about 25% or so of the houseless population, and yet we're only 1 to 2% of the general population. So tremendous disparity there in terms of sort of that condition, and we're trying to do our part to sort of like reduce the burden of that by creating a housing project that delivers low barrier and low income and supportive housing for our tribal relatives in the community.
That can nothing but be applauded for, because we've talked over the years, Dr. Stately, about the Wall of Forgotten Natives and how unsafe it is for our relatives who have never been homeless or haven't been homeless since 1491, as the saying goes. And to be able to help and just all, I can't imagine personally what my mental well-being would be if I was homeless. I mean, from wet socks on. I mean, I cringe when my hair gets greasy and I get all shiny. I need to take a shower, you know? I can't even imagine it.
Yeah. Well, actually, we all cringe when that happens to you. But
I was waiting for that.
I'm teasing you. We love you, Robert. I was gonna say, like, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably true of all kinds of folks. We have, like, I mean, these are like, I actually try to avoid using the term homelessness, by the way.
Mhm.
I'm working on deleting that term from my lexicon, my vocabulary, because, like, we're not homeless. We have our homes. The earth is our home, and home is, home. For many of us, this is our home. Especially, like, one of the things that was really interesting, like, we're not homeless. We live on our home, and earth is our home, and this community is our home. But we lack houses, right? We lack wooden frames that we all have to live in, and the safety and the security that provides so many other people. And so part of that is that that was really abundantly clear in the Wall of Forgotten Natives, which is, one of the things I saw early on in that whole condition, or that whole situation, was, people would sort of get housed. And they get people into housing, but a lot of times those housing, the place where they would end up would be someplace like out in, a 2 or 3 bedroom townhouse or apartment, like out in, like, the outer ring, Brooklyn Center, or Anoka or something like that, right? Someplace far away from South Minneapolis, for those folks that were sort of like living near and on the cultural corridor. And sometimes those people would end up back in the encampment within a few days, or at the navigation center, which was where people ended up with after the encampment was closed down. And what that told me is that, our relatives want to be close to one another. There's so much of that social fabric and cultural fabric, that glue that makes who we are as Indigenous people. The idea of being close to one another, sharing space, sharing social space, communal space, ceremonial practices, activity. It's the stuff that happens when we go to powwows, which is it's officially powwow season, right? Started in June. That to me speaks volumes to, like, what it is we need to be able to replicate in our communities is, the idea of the ability to have the benefits that a lot of other people in the other parts of the society benefit from. Safe communities where people live together closely. There's close ties to one another. There's the sharing of resources in abundance. I see this happening all the time in my own community that I live in, out in Prior Lake. I belong to a hockey family and a hockey program, and man, those parents, many of them who are not Indigenous, who are white, like, they share their resources, their money, their food, their rides to and from things. There's a big network of support for those folks, right? Like, we are entitled to those same things. We're entitled to those same benefits. And so, understanding that that's sort of like what we deserve and what we need and what we want is the ability to live close to one another and support each other in the ways that we have always done historically in small villages where we know each other and we all have eyes on each other's children, and we're taking care of one another in the best way we possibly can, right? And that system was fractured through colonization, right?
Right.
So,
right.
And then all the policies that that emanated from there. What the problem we see today with houselessness in our communities is a direct relationship to the failed policies of relocation from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
right? Forced removal. And those things, that piece has to be acknowledged, and it also has to be unpacked and understood. And so then what do we do to sort of recreate vibrant, vital communities is we acknowledge that, and not just pay it lip service, acknowledge it, and then do something about that to correct it.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, well, you were talking a little bit about the 50s and 60s. Maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about, when we were being pushed off our reservations, that people that had reservations and that were getting urbanized during the 50s and
Yeah,
60s.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm too young to remember the 50s and 60s, so they're just all stories to me.
Oh, that was yeah. Me too. I barely remember the 70s, but that's a whole nother reason.
Man, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Well, I mean, obviously, so like one thing that is important to recognize or remember is, if you don't know the information, is like to know that like in the late 1950s, early 60s, the federal government passed the Indian Relocation Act. It was a set of policies that was designed specifically to encourage Native people to leave their home communities on their reservations or in their tribal communities, and to go to urbanize, move them towards urbanization. This is another failed policy that's similar to sort of like the boarding school policy, which is like, let's destroy everything that that the glue that holds indigenous families and communities together by disrupting them and moving them all the way across into different communities. One of the things that was fundamentally helped shape my thought process around this is when I was living in Los Angeles and I was starting graduate school. I volunteered at an organization called Urban Indian United Indian Involvement in downtown Los Angeles. They had a small operation on Skid Row, and I went there to sort of kind of do some volunteer work as an intern when I was in graduate school. And I started running groups and doing some, support counseling for people who were houseless in Los Angeles. And when I would talk to people, I'd find out like none of the people that were houseless in Los Angeles, the majority of them weren't from there. They were from like New York and Minnesota and, all other places except Los Angeles or nearby, right? And they would tell me things like, I grew up living in a car. My parents were houseless. My great grandparents were houseless. We came here during the Relocation Act, and we ended up not having the education, the housing, all the things that were promised to us. And then we were too far away from families to benefit from the support and the resources that we have from being closer to them in a community that took care of one another, right? And that's the fundamental impact of the relocation policies. It destroyed and dismantled much of what made us Indigenous people. Like we lived in communities that took care of one another. And we're seeing the remnants of that today. We see that when we walk outside and we're walking around and we see houseless Native people living on the streets in tents, sleeping on the concrete. This is the legacy of that failed policy, of those failed policies. You can see it in front of you every day.
Wow. Dr. Stately, we're going to take a break here in a few seconds. I just want to say, I don't know if that's the first time I've heard it explained to me that way, but it makes so much sense. Wow. I'm pretty stunned here. I really appreciate that information, and it really, really makes sense. Wow. Hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and we're here with Dr. Stately, CEO of Native American Community Clinic here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, and we're going to be right back after this short break with Dr. Stately.
Stay with us.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesotans age 65 plus might qualify for Health Partners Minnesota Senior Health Options. The plan includes personal support, coverage for medical, prescription drugs, and dental, plus over 30 extra benefits. Eligibility information is available at healthpartners.com/oneplan. Health Partners is a health plan that contracts with both Medicare and the Minnesota Medical Assistance Medicaid program to provide benefits of both programs to enrollees. Enrollment in Health Partners depends on contract renewal.
When it comes to mental health, connections with others can be a way forward. How do you reach out when you need someone? What do you do to support those who struggle? Whether you're struggling or know someone who struggles, see connections as comfort, hope, and joy, like sending a text, sharing a moment, offering a hug, seeing an old friend, seeing your grandma. Together we can find ways to create a path forward. Visit cmentalhealth.org. Visit cmentalhealth.org.
Minnesota has made history by becoming the 12th state to pass paid family and medical leave into law. Starting on January 1st, 2026, you can take up to 12 weeks of paid leave when welcoming a new family member facing a health challenge or caring for a loved one. No longer will you have to choose between your job and your health or family. Join us in extending a heartfelt thank you to our legislators for their unwavering commitment to Minnesota families.
Paid for by Isaiah. Visit isaiahmn.org to learn more.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio. This is Spirit from Reservation Dogs. Get up and listen.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
Oh, that was a good one. That was
pretty good.
That harmonized.
It did.
I know. Do you sound like a boy band, or the Dixie Chicks? Well, they're actually they're called the Chicks now. Right? Yeah, the Chicks.
They're not called the Dixie Chicks anymore, and they got that's a whole nother radio show. Hey, Dr. Stately, when you were talking, I got a little emotional, and I think there's a couple reasons why. For me, just that story and the removal of home and feeling close to where you're at, and a lot of the maybe the homeless issue is being disconnected with where they're at, and it made me think about adopted kids and ICWA and the things that we're dealing with. The same time there was in Canada what was called the 60 Scoop, and it just makes me kind of think, wow, this is all really connected, because you talked about boarding schools not working for us, and we're missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, and in one way our adoptees are missing too.
Yep. I think that there's a really good friend of mine and a colleague of mine, Sandy Whitehawk, who has been doing this work for a number of years. She herself is a Lakota woman, I believe, who who came to know herself that she was adopted out at birth, due to some of these policies we've been talking about, and the impact that had on her understanding of who she was and the relationship to her world. She kind of always knew that somehow she didn't fit into the white family that adopted her. And this is a narrative we hear all of the time. And, and this issue isn't lost on me. I have my own personal experience. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but, I had a rocky relationship with my mother in my teen years. I have 16-year-old boys now, and man, I can understand that relationship really well. Like, she must have had tremendous patience for me, because I guarantee, she gave me that curse that all parents give their child, right? That I hope one day you have a son just like you, and then I got the double curse. So, I got these two boys that I adopted at birth, which were beautiful and wonderful, and somehow they've transformed into, episodic demons, at 16. But when I in my relationship with her and my adolescence, I was I wa- you know I was it was a complex, and um it was a challenging relationship because like I was coming of age in like the mid 70s, right? And I was seeing things and hearing things. I was seeing Indian Child Welfare Act take place in front of my eyes. I was reading about, Wounded Knee. I had relatives that were, um, had positions of leadership in AIM and all these. I saw the American Indian sort of renaissance happening before my eyes. I was reading literature and studying those things in high school, and there was a challenge at one point in time where I was trying to understand the world around me phenomenologically, and the things I was learning about, I came from and where my ancestors came from, and trying to reconcile it with this idea of like, I went to boarding school in South Dakota at St. Joe's School for Indian Children, and I had some pretty horrible experiences there, right? Like, as a young child, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, the whole bit, right? And my mom and I had this disagreement around the time I was 16. I was angry with her. We were yelling at her, and I said to her, like, she had been drinking. She'd come home that night from the corral, I think, and I said, why did you send me to that place? It was horrible. You know what they did to me there? And not really sort of understanding, like, of course she would know that what happened to me. She had gone to boarding school. Her mother and her father had gone to boarding school. Her grandparents had gone to boarding school. So she knows what that was like. And she broke down and she cried, and then she said, I didn't have a choice to send you. She said, child welfare was going to take you and your older brothers and sisters away from me if I didn't find a way to take care of you. And it was the only way that I could ensure that you would stay together and I would be able to put my life together and get you back. If you went into foster care, I'd never ever see you again. You'd never see each other again. And it was when she said that to me that it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like it was so weird. I can still remember this as a young man. It's like all of the puzzle pieces fell into place all of a sudden, right, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a different way of seeing her. I had been so angry with her and so frustrated with her for making the decisions that she made, and not recognizing that she made that decision out of love. She made that decision to send us away because she had no other resources. Why? She was a product of relocation. She didn't have a lot of resources, neither did the rest of our family. And so it's important that we talk about these things and we speak about these things and testify to them so that people can fundamentally understand that these are the way these things impacted us as human beings, and they have real world life legacies that carry on for generations. And so I've made it my life's work to do the work that I do, and also within my own family. I adopted my sons, but I want them to know that, like, I chose you, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving every single thing I have to you, so that you don't ever have to have that experience. And so, in some small way, I'm changing my specific family's destiny in that conversation.
Right.
So,
And we talk about breaking the cycle and being cycle
yeah.
breakers. I think our generation and
Our
the
generation
generations
is cycle breakers, yeah, and
yeah.
my children will be cycle breakers, and I mean, and that's how we begin to change this legacy. We we look at it, we address it, we run into the storm like buffalo, and we say we are going to do this, and we're going to get through this, and come across on the other side, and we'll be stronger and more resilient,
Mm.
and that's how we grow together as a community.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, pretty heavy show, Dr. Stately. Think 5 o'clock works good for you. Oh, wow.
Right.
What?
Well, there was a day and time when 5 o'clock meant something different for me, right? It's 5 o'clock somewhere all the time. So, but
Yeah,
I'd
tea
rather be
time,
doing
right?
this than what I used to do. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Well, I know
So,
when I quit drinking for many years, and we're talking about I was young when I quit drinking, and I was a lot of people's tolerance tester. And sometimes I can be that way again too. But I know when I was young and bouncing off the walls, there was a lot of love given freely to me and to my, I guess, quote unquote personality.
Yeah. Well, thank God I had people, even when I was drinking and using and my life was a wreck, there were people in the community who took care of me. Like,
Mhm.
when I, that's the beauty that I think one of the things also is like sort of like recognize that, our community takes care of one another. When I was out sort of stumbling around, there were people in the community that would take me in, make sure I was safe, let me sleep at their house, they'd feed me and send me home the next day. And so I had someone looking out for me, and that was another element of our community, and I'm really proud that I'm 36 years, 37 years sober. My children have never seen me drink a drop of alcohol or be intoxicated or impaired. They'll never know that of me.
Ditto. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow. Peony Gigi, Dr. Stately, thank you so much for being on. This was a great show, and 5 o'clock really does suit you. Hey, if you're listening to the show, you're part of the resistance from Chiefs Plenty Coops. The ground in which we stand on is sacred ground. We're still here. We are the 7th generation.
Free Leonard Peltier now.
Now.
Tune in this Saturday morning right here on AM 950 for the Gardening with